Hello, friends. If you are looking for a complete and in depth review of this train to Busan, you've come to the right place. In today's video, we'll break down the full story, explore the talented cast, analyze the box office performance, and highlight the most powerful moments that make this film stand out. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get started. The story begins in a world that feels ordinary, structured, routine, and predictable, but beneath that surface, something unseen has already begun to shift. A quiet sense of imbalance exists, one that has not yet revealed itself fully, but is already moving through the edges of society. It starts small, almost unnoticeable, like a disturbance that no one takes seriously, until it becomes impossible to ignore. At the center of this world is Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, a fund manager whose life is defined by work, efficiency, and emotional distance. He is a man who measures success through results, not relationships, and this approach has shaped not only his career but also his role as a father. His connection with his daughter Suan is strained, not through conflict but through absence. He is physically present but emotionally distant, unable to give her the attention she quietly seeks. Soo-on, portrayed by Kim Soo-on, represents innocence and honesty in contrast to her father's controlled world. She does not demand much, only time, only connection. Her birthday becomes the emotional starting point of the story, a simple request that reveals something deeper. She does not want material gifts, she wants to go to Busan to see her mother. It is a request rooted not in desire but in longing. Uh, Seok-woo, initially reluctant, agrees, not out of emotional understanding but out of obligation. This decision sets everything into motion. What begins as a routine journey becomes the path into something far more intense, something that neither of them could anticipate. The train station is busy, filled with people moving through their own lives, unaware of what is about to unfold. Among them are individuals who will soon become part of a shared struggle, each carrying their own stories, their own personalities, their own ways of reacting to crisis. There is Sang Hwa, portrayed by Dong-seok, a strong and grounded man whose presence carries both physical strength and emotional warmth. Unlike Seok-woo, he is openly protective and deeply connected to those around him, especially his pregnant wife. There are others as well, passengers from different walks of life, each representing a different response to the world. Some are kind, some indifferent, some self centered. At this stage, they are simply individuals sharing the same space. But soon that shared space will turn into something else entirely. As the train prepares to depart, a subtle but crucial moment occurs, one that goes largely unnoticed. A distressed individual manages to board at the last second, slipping into the train just as the doors close. There is something unusual about her behavior, something erratic, something unstable, but in the rush of departure, it is overlooked. The train begins to move. At first, everything feels normal. Passengers settle into their seats, conversations begin, routines take over. The world outside the windows passes by calmly, giving no indication of the chaos that is beginning to unfold elsewhere. News reports flicker in the background, hinting at disturbances, but nothing that immediately alarms the passengers. Seok Woo remains focused on his work even during the journey, unable to fully disconnect from the life he has built. Suan, sitting beside him, quietly observes, her presence calm but emotionally distant. The gap between them is not loud, but it is there. Then something changes. The infected passenger begins to show clear signs of distress. Her movements become violent, unpredictable. What was once subtle becomes undeniable. Panic begins to spread, confusion turning into fear as the situation escalates rapidly. Within moments, the controlled environment of the train begins to collapse. The infection spreads with terrifying speed, transforming individuals into something driven purely by instinct. The rules of normal life no longer apply. The train, once a symbol of movement and routine, becomes a confined space of danger, where escape is not simple and safety is uncertain. Seok-woo is forced into a situation he cannot control through logic or distance. The world he understands, structured, predictable, is gone. In its place is chaos, where decisions must be made instantly and consequences follow immediately. Sang-hwa reacts differently. His instincts are protective, his actions direct. He does not hesitate, he moves to defend, to shield, to act. His presence becomes a contrast to Seok Woo's initial hesitation, showing a different way of responding to crisis. Suan, caught in the middle of all this, becomes the emotional core of the story. Her fear is real, but so is her awareness. She sees not just the danger but the choices people make in response to it. As the train continues forward, the situation intensifies, compartments become barriers, passengers become threats, trust becomes uncertain, and survival becomes the only immediate goal. What started as a simple journey to Busan has now turned into something else entirely. A fight to stay alive in a world that is changing faster than anyone can understand. And as the reality of the situation sets in, one question begins to rise above everything else. In a moment where survival is everything, what kind of person will you choose to be? As the train speeds forward, the fragile sense of normalcy shatters completely, replaced by chaos that spreads faster than anyone can comprehend. What began as a single disturbance quickly evolves into a chain reaction, moving through the tightly confined space of the train with terrifying. The infection does not give time for understanding, it forces immediate reaction. Within moments, fear replaces confusion, and survival becomes the only instinct guiding every decision. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, finds himself pulled out of the controlled, calculated world he is used to. His first instinct is not heroic, it is protective but narrowly focused. He grabs Suan and pulls her close, his attention fixed only on keeping her safe. In this moment, his character begins to reveal itself clearly. He is not a bad person, but he is conditioned to prioritize his own circle above all else. The larger situation, the fate of others around him, remains secondary in his mind. Su-an, portrayed by Kim Su-an, reacts with fear but also with awareness. She sees the panic around her, the desperation in people's actions, and the way fear begins to shape behavior. Unlike her father, she does not separate herself emotionally from others. Even in danger, her instinct is not just to survive, but to understand and empathize. This contrast between father and daughter begins to grow stronger as the situation escalates. Meanwhile, the infection spreads aggressively through the train. Passengers who were moments ago ordinary individuals are now transformed into fast moving, uncontrollable threats. Their behavior is erratic, driven purely by instinct, and impossible to reason with. The confined space of the train amplifies the turning every compartment into a potential trap. There is no clear escape, no safe distance, only movement and reaction. Amid this chaos, Sang-hwa, portrayed by Dong-seok, emerges as a powerful presence. His approach is immediate and decisive. Where others panic or freeze, he acts. His strength is not just physical, it is grounded in clarity. He understands that hesitation will cost lives, and so he moves forward with purpose, protecting his pregnant wife and assisting others without overthinking. His character represents a different response to crisis, one that balances survival with responsibility. The train becomes divided, both physically and emotionally. Passengers begin to isolate themselves into groups, closing doors, creating barriers, trying to hold back the infected. These barriers provide temporary safety, but they also create separation, dividing people not just from danger, but from each other. Trust becomes fragile. Fear begins to influence decisions, leading some to act selfishly, prioritizing their own safety above everything else. Seok Woo aligns himself with this mindset at first. He focuses on finding a safe space, avoiding unnecessary risks, and keeping distance from others who might slow them down or increase danger. His logic is clear: survival requires efficiency, and emotional decisions could lead to mistakes. But this perspective begins to face subtle challenges as he observes the actions of others. Sang-hwa, in contrast, does not isolate himself. He works with others, coordinates movements, and takes risks to help those who cannot protect themselves. His actions are not reckless, they are purposeful. He understands that survival is not just about individual strength but about collective effort. This difference in approach creates a quiet tension between him and Seok Woo, representing two opposing philosophies in the face of crisis. As the train continues its journey, the situation becomes more complex. News reports and announcements begin to reveal that the outbreak is not limited to the train, it is spreading beyond it. The world outside is changing just as rapidly, and the idea of reaching Busan as a safe destination becomes uncertain. The journey is no longer just about distance, it is about whether there is anywhere left to go. Inside the train, the infected continue to move, their presence unpredictable and relentless. Safe compartments become temporary refuges, but they are never permanent. The sense of is fragile, easily broken by a single mistake or moment of every decision matters, and every movement carries risk. Suan watches all of this unfold, her perspective quietly shaping the emotional core of the story. She notices how people treat each other, how fear changes behavior, and how some choose kindness even in the worst. Her presence begins to influence Seok Woo in subtle ways, challenging his narrow focus and forcing him to see beyond immediate survival. The train itself becomes more than just a setting, it becomes a moving environment where human nature is tested under extreme conditions. Every passenger is faced with the same reality, but their responses differ. Some act with courage, others with fear, some with selfishness, and some with sacrifice. As the chaos stabilizes slightly into controlled tension, a new phase begins to take shape. Groups form, strategies develop, and the initial shock gives way to something more deliberate. The fight is no longer just about reacting, it is about planning, about moving forward despite uncertainty. Seok Woo begins to realize that survival may require more than just protecting himself and his daughter. The world around him is forcing a change, pushing him toward decisions that go beyond his usual way of thinking. And as the train continues toward an uncertain destination, one truth becomes increasingly clear. This journey is not just about escaping danger, it is about discovering who you become when there is no easy choice left. As the train continues its relentless journey forward, the initial chaos begins to settle into a tense and unstable rhythm where every moment feels controlled yet fragile. The passengers who have managed to survive the first wave of infection now find themselves trapped in a moving environment where safety is temporary and danger is constant. The fear that once caused panic now transforms into cautious awareness, but beneath that awareness lies exhaustion, uncertainty, and the growing realization that this situation is far from over. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, remains focused on protecting Suan, but his perspective is slowly beginning to shift. The events unfolding around him are forcing him to confront a reality he cannot control through logic alone. He watches how quickly situations change, how unpredictable the infected are, and how the decisions people make can determine not only their own survival but the survival of others. His instincts still push him toward isolation, toward minimizing risk by avoiding involvement, but the world around him is challenging that mindset more with every passing moment. Suwan, portrayed by Kim Suwan, continues to observe everything with a clarity that contrasts with the fear surrounding her. She notices how people behave under pressure, how some act with kindness while others are driven by fear. Her presence remains calm but emotionally aware, and this awareness begins to influence her father in subtle ways. She does not argue or demand change, but her reactions reflect a perspective that goes beyond simple survival. She sees people not just threats or obstacles, and that difference begins to matter. Meanwhile, Sang-hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, becomes a central figure within the group of survivors. His approach remains consistent, direct, protective, and grounded in action. He understands that the situation requires more than individual survival. He begins coordinating with others, helping to form a small group that can move together and respond more effectively to the threats around them. His strength provides stability, but it is his willingness to act for others that truly defines his role. The train compartments now act as temporary zones of control, with doors separating safety from danger. Survivors gather in small groups, trying to maintain distance from the infected while also managing their own fear. Communication becomes essential, but trust remains uncertain. People question each other's intentions, fearing that one mistake could put everyone at risk. The psychological tension grows alongside the physical danger, creating an environment where decisions are influenced not just by logic but by fear. At the same time, the infected continue to move unpredictably through the train. Their speed and aggression make them difficult to avoid, and their presence turns every attempt at movement into a calculated risk. The survivors begin to understand that staying still is not a permanent solution. If they want to reach a safer place, they will have to move through dangerous areas, facing the threat directly rather than avoiding it. This realization leads to a critical shift in strategy. Sanghua and a few others begin to plan a way to move across the train from one compartment to another in order to reach a safer section. It is a risky decision, one that requires coordination, timing, and trust. Seok-woo initially hesitates. His instinct tells him to stay where he is to avoid unnecessary danger. But the situation makes it clear that staying still is no longer safe. The group prepares carefully, understanding that even a small mistake could be fatal. Every movement must be precise, every action coordinated. The tension builds as they get ready to step into an environment where the infected are waiting, unpredictable, and relentless. As they begin to move, the difference in their approaches becomes clear. Sang Hua leads with confidence, using his strength and awareness to protect the group. Others follow, relying on each other to maintain balance and coordination. Seok Woo, though still cautious, begins to engage more actively, realizing that survival now depends on participation rather than avoidance. The movement through the train becomes a test of both physical and mental endurance. The infected react quickly, forcing the group to adapt in real time. There is no room for hesitation, no space for doubt. Each step forward is earned through effort, through cooperation, and through the willingness to face danger directly. Suan remains close to her father, her presence a constant reminder of what he is trying to protect, but she is also a reminder of something else, that survival is not just about reaching safety but about how you reach it. As the group pushes forward, the situation grows more intense. The boundaries between safety and danger blur, and the cost of every decision becomes more visible. The journey is no longer just physical, it is emotional, psychological, and deeply personal for everyone involved. And as they continue moving through the train, facing obstacles that test their limits, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. In a world where danger is everywhere, survival is not only about staying alive, it is about the choices you make when every option carries risk. As the group begins their dangerous movement through the train, the environment around them transforms into a narrow corridor of constant threat where every step forward must be calculated and every second carries risk. The infected are no longer distant, they are close, unpredictable, and highly reactive to sound and motion. The survivors quickly realize that this is not just a test of strength, but of awareness, timing, and control under pressure. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, is no longer standing back as an observer. The urgency of the situation forces him into action, pushing him beyond the boundaries of his usual decision making. His focus remains on Suan, but now he understands that protecting her requires more than distance, it requires engagement. Every movement he makes is now connected not only to her safety but to the group's survival as a whole. Sang Hua, portrayed by Dong-seok, takes the lead with controlled strength, positioning himself at the front where the risk is greatest. His actions are decisive and efficient, not driven by panic but by clear intention. He uses his physical presence to create space, to block threats, and to guide others forward. But what stands out is not just his strength, it is his awareness of everyone around him. He moves not just for himself but for the group, constantly adjusting to ensure that no one is left exposed. The group advances carefully, moving from one compartment to the next, each transition requiring precise coordination. Doors become critical points of tension. Opening them means stepping into uncertainty, while closing them offers only temporary relief. The survivors learn quickly that hesitation can be as dangerous as recklessness. They must act with confidence even when they are unsure. The infected respond aggressively to any disturbance. Sudden movements or noise draw their attention instantly, forcing the group to adapt their approach. They begin to rely on controlled motion, minimizing sound, and using timing to their advantage. This creates moments of intense stillness where even breathing feels loud, followed by bursts of rapid action when movement becomes unavoidable. Suan, portrayed by Kim Suan, stays close, her fear present but contained. She watches everything carefully, absorbing the reality of the situation in a way that is both emotional and perceptive. Her presence continues to influence Seok-woo, reminding him that survival is not just about avoiding danger but about protecting something meaningful within it. As the group pushes forward, the strain begins to show. Physical exhaustion sets in, and the constant pressure begins to affect their focus. Small mistakes become more likely, and the risk of those mistakes grows with every step. Yet, despite this, they continue driven by the understanding that stopping is not an option. A critical moment occurs when the group encounters a heavily infected section of the train. The path forward is no longer clear and the usual approach is no longer sufficient. The survivors must make a decision, wait and risk being trapped, or move forward and face immediate danger. The tension rises as they assess their options, each second adding to the pressure. Sanghwa chooses to act. His decision is not reckless, it is necessary. He creates an opening, using his strength to push through the immediate threat, giving the others a chance to follow. The movement is fast, intense, and coordinated, requiring everyone to commit fully. There is no room for doubt, no time to hesitate. Seok Woo follows, no longer holding back. His actions become more decisive, his focus sharper. He begins to trust the group, to rely on their coordination rather than distancing himself from it. This shift is subtle but important. It marks the beginning of a deeper transformation in how he approaches the situation. The group manages to push through, but not without cost. The effort required leaves them physically and mentally strained, and the realization of how close they came to failure lingers heavily. The danger is not decreasing, it is evolving, becoming more complex and more demanding. As they reach a temporary safe compartment, the silence that follows feels heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts and rising awareness. They have made progress, but the journey is far from over. The train continues to move, carrying them toward a destination that is still uncertain, through an environment that offers no guarantees. Seok Woo looks at Suan, and for the first time his concern reflects more than immediate protection. There is a growing understanding that what matters is not just reaching safety, but how they endure the journey together. The group regains their composure, knowing that they cannot remain where they are for long. The path ahead is still dangerous, still unpredictable, and still demanding more from them than they are prepared to give. And as they prepare to move again, one truth becomes increasingly clear. Survival is no longer about reacting to danger, it is about facing it step by step, even when the outcome is unknown. After forcing their way through one of the most dangerous sections of the train, the survivors enter a brief moment of stillness, but it is not comfort, it is a fragile pause between waves of danger. The air feels heavy, filled with exhaustion and unspoken tension as each person tries to recover both physically and mentally. What they have just endured has changed them. The reality of the situation is no longer abstract or distant. It is immediate, constant, and deeply personal. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, begins to process everything differently. The controlled mindset he once relied on is no longer enough to navigate this world. He has seen how quickly circumstances shift, how survival depends not only on personal decisions, but on the actions of others. His focus remains on Suan, but his understanding of what it means to protect her is evolving. Distance and isolation are no longer effective. Survival now requires connection, awareness, and difficult choices. Suan, portrayed by Kim Suan, continues to observe the people around her with quiet clarity. Her fear is present, but it does not overwhelm her. Instead, she responds with empathy, noticing the pain, the panic, and the decisions others are forced to make. She does not see the world in terms of threat alone, she sees the human side of it even in the middle of chaos. Her perspective becomes a subtle but powerful influence on her father, challenging the boundaries he has placed around his thinking. Sang Hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, remains a stabilizing force within the group. Despite the physical strain, his focus does not waver. He checks on others, ensures that everyone is still able to move, and maintains a sense of structure within the chaos. His presence brings a level of reassurance, not because the danger is gone, but because someone is willing to face it directly without losing clarity. However, the situation takes a new turn as the group approaches another section of the train where uninfected passengers have isolated themselves. These individuals have secured their space, closing doors and creating barriers, believing that separation is the only way to stay safe. From their perspective, anyone coming from outside is a potential threat, regardless of their condition. When the survivors attempt to enter, they are met not with relief, but with resistance. Fear has changed the behavior of these passengers. They are no longer simply trying to survive, they are trying to control their environment, even if it means rejecting others. Suspicion replaces trust, and the idea of safety becomes tied to exclusion. The survivors who have just risked everything to move forward now face a different kind of obstacle, not the infected, but the fear of other people. Seok Woo witnesses this and feels the tension directly. This situation reflects the mindset he once held, prioritizing personal safety above all else, minimizing risk by limiting connection. But now, standing on the outside, he sees the consequences of that thinking. The separation that once felt logical now feels harsh, even dangerous in its own way. Sang Hwa reacts with frustration but remains controlled. He understands the fear driving the other passengers, but he also recognizes that division weakens everyone. His approach is firm, attempting to reason and push forward at the same time. He does not accept rejection easily, especially when it puts others at risk. The confrontation becomes a moment of psychological conflict rather than physical danger. The infected are still a threat, but here, the real tension comes from human decisions: who to trust, who to let in, and how far one is willing to go to feel safe. The survivors must prove that they are not a threat, that they are still human, still part of the same struggle. Eventually, the barrier opens, but the damage is already done. The sense of unity that briefly formed among survivors begins to fracture. Fear creates distance, and that distance leads to mistrust. Even within the group, subtle shifts occur as people begin to question not only the situation but each other. The emotional strain becomes just as significant as the physical danger. Seok Woo reflects on this moment deeply. For the first time, he begins to understand that survival is not just about reaching a safe place, it is about how people treat each other along the way. The choices made under pressure reveal something fundamental about human nature, something that cannot be ignored. And the train continues its journey, but the atmosphere inside has changed. The danger is no longer only external, it exists within the interactions between people, within the decisions driven by fear, and within the struggle to maintain trust in a world that is rapidly losing it. Suan looks at her father, her expression carrying a quiet question, not spoken but understood. It is not about what is happening, but about how he will respond to it. And as the group prepares to move forward once again, facing both the infected and the uncertainty of human behavior, one truth becomes unavoidable. In a world where fear spreads as fast as danger, the hardest challenge is not just staying alive, but staying human. The fragile unity inside the train begins to fracture further as fear settles deeper into the minds of the passengers, turning caution into suspicion and survival into something colder, more calculated. What was once a shared struggle against a common threat slowly transforms into a divided environment where people begin to see each other not as allies but as potential risks. The danger outside the doors remains constant, but now an equally powerful tension exists within. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, feels this shift more clearly than before. The experience of being denied entry, of being treated as a threat despite fighting to survive, has begun to reshape his understanding of the situation. He can no longer ignore the consequences of the mindset he once believed was necessary. The idea of isolating for safety now reveals its darker side, where fear strips away empathy and replaces it with self preservation at any cost. Suan, portrayed by Kim Suan, reacts emotionally to the division she witnesses. She struggles to understand why people who are all facing the same danger would choose to turn against each other. Her perspective remains grounded in compassion, and this creates a quiet but powerful contrast to the behavior around her. She does not see the situation in terms of strategy or risk. She sees it in terms of right and wrong, connection and separation. Sang Hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, continues to stand as a pillar of strength, but even he begins to feel the strain of the growing division. His patience is tested as he confronts individuals who prioritize their own safety without considering the impact on others, yet he does not lose control. Instead, he reinforces his role as a protector, focusing on those who remain willing to work together rather than wasting energy on those driven entirely by fear. As the train moves closer to its next, hope briefly begins to surface. There are reports that certain stations may still be secure, that there may be areas where the outbreak has not fully spread. This possibility introduces a new kind of tension, not immediate fear, but cautious anticipation. The idea of reaching a safe place becomes a driving force, motivating the passengers to endure despite everything they have experienced. However, uncertainty remains. No one knows what conditions truly await them outside the train. Information is limited, fragmented, and unreliable. The passengers are forced to make decisions based on incomplete knowledge, trusting in possibilities rather than certainty. This lack of clarity adds another layer of pressure, making every choice more difficult. As the train slows and approaches the station, the atmosphere shifts once again. Movement resumes, plans are made, and groups prepare to disembark. The idea of leaving the confined space of the train feels like relief, but it also introduces new risks. Outside, the environment is unknown, potentially just as dangerous as what they are trying to escape. Seok-woo prepares to move with Swan, his focus sharper than before. He no longer sees survival as a simple equation of risk and reward. The journey has forced him to reconsider his priorities, to recognize that the choices he makes affect not only his own outcome but the people around him. This realization does not make his decisions easier, but it makes them more meaningful. The doors open. For a brief moment, there is silence. Then movement begins. Passengers step onto the platform cautiously, scanning their surroundings, searching for signs of safety or danger. The space feels open compared to the train, but that openness brings vulnerability. There are fewer barriers, fewer places to hide, and more uncertainty about what might happen next. At first, it seems calm, too calm. The absence of immediate danger creates a false sense of security, one that feels unnatural given everything they have experienced. Some passengers begin to relax slightly, allowing hope to take hold. Others remain tense, aware that calm does not always mean safe. Then the reality reveals itself. The situation outside is not under control. The infection has spread further than expected, and the sense of safety begins to collapse almost as quickly as it formed. What was meant to be an escape becomes another, forcing the survivors to react once again under pressure. Panic begins to return, but this time it is different. It is no longer driven by shock, it is driven by understanding. The survivors know what is happening, and that knowledge makes the situation even more intense. Seok Woo grabs Suan, his instincts sharp and immediate, but now guided by a deeper awareness. He is not just reacting, he is anticipating, adjusting, and thinking beyond the moment. The transformation within him continues, shaped by everything he has witnessed so far. Sanghua moves quickly to protect those around him, his actions once again grounded in strength and purpose. Even as the situation deteriorates, he does not lose clarity. He focuses on movement, on keeping people together, on pushing forward despite the chaos. The survivors are forced back into motion, leaving behind the brief illusion of safety and re entering a world where danger is constant and unavoidable. And as they retreat from what was supposed to be their escape, one truth becomes undeniable. There is no simple way out of this, no guaranteed safe place, only the choices they make and the strength they find to keep moving forward. The illusion of safety at the station collapses completely as the survivors are forced back into motion, their brief hope replaced by a deeper, more urgent understanding that nowhere is truly secure. The open space that once seemed like an escape now feels just as dangerous as the confined train, if not more. The infection has spread beyond control, and the world outside reflects the same chaos they were trying to leave behind. The difference now is that there are fewer boundaries, fewer predictable patterns, and far less protection. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, reacts faster than before, his instincts no longer limited by hesitation. The experiences he has gone through have reshaped his decision making, forcing him to act with both urgency and awareness. His priority remains Suan, but his understanding of what it takes to keep her safe has evolved. He is no longer trying to avoid involvement, he is actively engaging with the situation, making decisions that consider both immediate danger and the broader environment. Su-an, portrayed by Kim Su-an, stays close, her fear visible but controlled. She has seen enough to understand the seriousness of what is happening, yet she continues to hold on to her sense of empathy. Even as people panic around her, she notices who helps and who turns away, who stays human and who lets fear take over. Her presence remains a quiet force, influencing her father and grounding him in something deeper than survival alone. Sang-hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, once again takes on the role of protector, moving with strength and purpose through the chaos. His focus is clear: keep the group together, keep them moving, and minimize exposure to danger. He does not waste time on uncertainty. Every action he takes is direct, shaped by the understanding that hesitation could cost lives. His presence provides structure in a situation that is rapidly losing it. The survivors regroup as quickly as possible, realizing that staying in one place is not an option. The station is no longer safe, and the train, despite its dangers, may still offer a more controlled environment. This realization forces them into a difficult choice: return to the place they were trying to escape, or remain in an environment that is quickly becoming unmanageable. They choose to move. The journey back toward the train becomes another test of coordination and endurance. The infected are scattered throughout the area, unpredictable and aggressive, forcing the survivors to navigate carefully while maintaining speed. The open space makes it harder to anticipate movement, increasing the risk with every step. Seok-woo begins to take a more active role within the group, no longer relying solely on others to lead. His actions become more decisive, more aligned with the needs of the group rather than just his own safety. This shift is not dramatic, but it is significant. It reflects a growing understanding that survival is connected, that no one can succeed entirely alone in a situation like this. As they move, the group faces moments of separation and reconnection, each one adding to the tension. The environment does not allow for perfect coordination and small gaps begin to appear. These gaps create vulnerability, forcing individuals to make quick decisions under pressure. Sanghua continues to bridge these gaps using his strength to hold the group together, but the strain is becoming visible. The physical effort combined with the constant threat begins to take its toll. Yet he does not slow down. His commitment remains firm, driven by a sense of responsibility that goes beyond personal survival. Eventually, the survivors manage to reach the train again, but the relief is limited. The situation inside has changed as well. The separation between groups has deepened, and the atmosphere is now filled with distrust and tension. The events at the station have only reinforced the fear that already existed, making cooperation even more difficult. Seok Woo notices this immediately. The environment inside the train now reflects the same division he witnessed earlier, but with greater intensity. People are no longer just cautious, they are defensive, unwilling to take risks for others, unwilling to trust without certainty. Suan looks at the people around her, her expression filled with quiet disappointment. She sees the distance between them, the lack of connection, and the way fear has reshaped their behavior. Her reaction is simple but powerful. She does not accept this as the only way to survive. As the train begins to move again, carrying them further into an uncertain future, the tension settles into a new form. It is no longer just about immediate danger, it is about how long they can endure, how much they can withstand, and whether they can hold on to their humanity as the situation continues to evolve. Seok Woo sits beside Suan, his thoughts no longer focused solely on strategy or survival. He is beginning to understand that this journey is changing him, forcing him to confront parts of himself he had long ignored. And as the train moves forward once again, one truth becomes increasingly clear. Survival is not just about escaping danger, it is about what you become while trying to survive it. As the train continues its relentless journey, the atmosphere inside becomes heavier than ever, shaped not only by the constant threat of the infected outside, but also by the growing tension among the survivors themselves. The train is no longer just a vehicle of escape, it has become a confined world where fear, mistrust, and survival instincts constantly collide. Every compartment carries its own emotional pressure, and every group inside is forced to confront not only danger but the choices of others. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, now moves with a deeper awareness of the situation around him. His focus on Suan remains absolute, but his understanding of survival has expanded beyond personal protection. He observes how quickly fear can change people, how easily trust can break, and how decisions made in panic can affect everyone. This awareness forces him to think beyond immediate reactions, shaping a more balanced approach to the challenges they face. Suan, portrayed by Kim Suan, continues to serve as a quiet, emotional anchor. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, she maintains a sense of empathy that contrasts sharply with the fear driven behavior around her. She notices not just danger but humanity, those who help, those who hesitate, and those who turn away. Her presence influences Seok Woo in subtle but meaningful ways, reminding him that survival without compassion can feel empty. Sanghwa, portrayed by Dong-seok, remains one of the strongest stabilizing forces within the group. His actions are direct, efficient, and always focused on protecting others. However, even his strength is now being tested by exhaustion and constant pressure. Despite this, he continues to lead through action rather than words, ensuring that those around him have structure in a situation that offers very little of it. Inside the train, divisions among passengers become more visible. Some groups isolate themselves further, blocking access and refusing entry to anyone they do not trust. Others struggle to maintain cooperation, realizing that isolation may increase vulnerability rather than reduce it. The train compartments, once simple spaces for travel, now reflect different philosophies of survival, some based on unity, others on separation. These conflicting approaches create tension that sometimes becomes more dangerous than the infected themselves. Misunderstandings escalate quickly, and fear often overrides logic. In such an environment, even good intentions can be misinterpreted, leading to conflict where cooperation is needed most. Sakwu finds himself navigating this complexity more actively. He is no longer just reacting to threats, he is interpreting human behavior under pressure. He begins to recognize patterns not just in the infected movement but in how fear spreads among people. This awareness forces him to make more nuanced decisions, balancing safety with cooperation. A critical moment arises when the train encounters another heavily compromised section, where infected passengers have already spread through multiple compartments. The survivors are forced into rapid coordination once again, moving quickly while avoiding contact and maintaining formation. The environment becomes chaotic with limited space, sudden movement, and constant risk. Sanghua leads the response without hesitation. His strength creates openings, allowing others to pass through dangerous areas. He absorbs pressure that others cannot handle, ensuring the group maintains momentum. His role becomes even more vital as the situation escalates, but so does the strain on him. Seok Woo now contributes more directly, acting alongside the group rather than following from a distance. His movements are more confident, shaped by experience rather than uncertainty. He begins to understand that survival is not just about protecting one person, it is about maintaining the flow of the group as a whole. Suan remains close, but her presence continues to influence the emotional tone of the journey. She observes everything with quiet clarity, and her reactions often reflect a deeper understanding of human behavior than the adults around her. Her perspective continues to challenge Seok-woo's earlier mindset, reinforcing the importance of connection even in moments of extreme danger. As the group pushes forward through the train, exhaustion becomes more apparent. The constant movement, combined with psychological pressure, begins to wear down even the strongest individuals. Yet stopping is not an option. Every delay increases risk, and every decision carries consequences that cannot be undone. Despite this, there are moments of coordination that show how far the group has come. Actions that once required instruction now happen instinctively. Small signs of trust begin to reappear, not because fear has disappeared, but because survival demands cooperation. The train continues forward, carrying them deeper into uncertainty. The destination remains unclear, and the possibility of safety feels increasingly distant. Yet within this unstable environment, something subtle continues to develop, a fragile but growing sense of unity among those who choose to move forward together. Seok Woo reflects on this as they advance. He realizes that survival is no longer just about avoiding danger, but about maintaining connection in a world that constantly pushes people apart. And as the train moves through another dark stretch of track, one truth becomes undeniable. In the middle of chaos, survival depends not only on strength, but on the willingness to stay connected even when everything else falls apart. As the train continues deeper into its journey, the sense of safety has completely disappeared, replaced by a constant awareness that danger can appear at any moment from any direction. The survivors no longer think in terms of comfort or destination, they think in terms of movement, timing, and survival. Every compartment they pass through carries uncertainty, and every decision they make must account for both immediate threats and unpredictable human behavior. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, has now fully transitioned from a detached observer into an active participant in the group's survival. His earlier instincts of isolation have been replaced by a more adaptive mindset. He no longer believes that distance alone can ensure safety. Instead, he understands that survival requires coordination, awareness, and trust, even in situations where trust feels fragile. His focus remains on Suan, but his actions now contribute more directly to the group's movement as well. Soo-an, portrayed by Kim Soo-an, continues to observe the unfolding events with a quiet but deeply perceptive awareness. She does not fully understand the technical details of survival, but she understands human behavior with surprising clarity. She sees fear turning into aggression, cooperation turning into hesitation, and kindness appearing even in the most difficult moments. Her emotional responses often highlight the contrast between what people are capable of and what they choose to become under pressure. Sang Hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, remains a central force of stability within the group. His actions are consistent and direct, shaped by a strong sense of responsibility toward those who are vulnerable. Even as exhaustion increases, he continues to lead from the front, ensuring that the group maintains forward momentum. His strength is not just physical, it is psychological as he absorbs pressure that others cannot carry and converts it into action. The train itself becomes more unstable as the situation escalates. Certain sections are now completely compromised, forcing survivors to take alternative routes through compartments that are increasingly dangerous. The infected continue to move unpredictably, creating sudden obstacles that require immediate reaction. The environment is no longer structured, it is fragmented, forcing constant adaptation. Within this instability, human behavior becomes even more varied. Some passengers continue to isolate themselves, believing that separation is the only form of safety. Others begin to reconsider their approach, realizing that cooperation may offer a better chance of survival. These conflicting attitudes create tension within the train as different groups struggle to define what survival truly means. Seok Woo finds himself navigating these shifting dynamics more consciously. He begins to understand that survival is not a fixed strategy, it is a continuous process of adjustment. Each situation requires a different response, and each response carries consequences that affect not only him and Suan, but everyone around them. This realization marks a significant shift in his character as he moves further away from purely individual thinking. A critical moment arises when the group is forced to pass through a section where visibility is low and movement is restricted. The confined space increases the risk of sudden encounters with infected passengers, making coordination more difficult. Every step must be carefully timed and every movement must be deliberate. Sanghua takes immediate control of the situation, guiding the group through the danger with precision. His decisions are quick but calculated, ensuring that no unnecessary risks are taken. He creates space where there is none, using both strength and awareness to protect those behind him. However, the strain of continuous effort begins to show more clearly now, adding emotional weight to his role. Seok Woo follows closely, now more integrated into the group structure. His movements are more confident, shaped by experience rather than hesitation. He reacts faster, anticipates better, and begins to trust the collective flow of the group rather than relying solely on personal judgment. Suan remains a constant presence beside him, her emotional awareness continuing to influence his decisions in subtle ways. She notices the effort others are making, the sacrifices being considered, and the tension that builds with every passing moment. Her perspective reinforces the human aspect of their journey, reminding Seok Woo that survival is not only about reaching a destination, but about the cost of getting there. As they move forward, the train becomes both a path and a trap, offering movement but limiting escape, providing direction but constantly exposing them to danger. The survivors are forced to accept this contradiction, learning to operate within a system that is both necessary and hostile. Moments of coordination begin to appear more naturally. The group adjusts to each other's movements with increasing efficiency. Trust, while still fragile, begins to reform in small but meaningful ways. These moments do not eliminate danger, but they make it manageable. And as the train continues through another stretch of darkness, carrying them closer to an uncertain future, one realization becomes increasingly clear. Survival is no longer about individual strength, it is about how well people can move together, even when everything around them is falling apart. As the train pushes deeper into its journey, the environment inside becomes increasingly unstable. not just because of the infected threat, but because of the emotional and psychological strain building among the survivors. The compartments that once served as temporary shelters now feel like fragile zones of uncertainty where safety is never permanent and trust is constantly tested. Every moment forward feels like a balance between survival and collapse. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, now operates with a clearer sense of purpose than before. His transformation is no longer subtle. It is visible in the way he moves, reacts, and prioritizes decisions. He no longer sees survival as a solitary goal focused only on Soo-an. Instead, he understands that protecting her is directly tied to the condition of the group around them. If the group fails, individual safety becomes impossible. This realization continues to reshape his instincts in real time. Soo-an, portrayed by Kim Soo-an, remains emotionally aware of the shifting atmosphere. She observes the growing tension between passengers, the fatigue in their movements, and the silent fear that influences every decision. Despite her age, she recognizes the emotional weight of the situation, often noticing details that adults overlook in their urgency. Her presence continues to serve as a reminder of innocence within a collapsing environment, reinforcing the emotional core of the journey. Sang Hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, continues to act as a stabilizing force, though the strain on him is becoming increasingly visible. His physical strength remains essential to the group's survival, but the emotional and physical cost of constant action begins to accumulate. Even so, he does not step back. His role has become more than protection, it is responsibility. He ensures that others can continue moving even when the environment becomes overwhelming. The train now feels like a fragmented world, with each section representing a different level of safety, fear, and human behavior. Some compartments are filled with cooperation, where passengers attempt to organize and support each other. Others are dominated by fear, where isolation and suspicion define every interaction. This division creates an unstable ecosystem within the train, where survival depends not only on external threats but also on internal cohesion. The infected remain a constant danger, moving unpredictably through accessible areas of the train. Their presence forces the survivors into continuous motion, preventing any long term stability. Every attempt to rest or regroup is interrupted by the need to adapt, to respond, to move again. This cycle creates exhaustion, both physical and mental, gradually wearing down even the most resilient individuals. Seok Woo begins to take on a more active leadership role within the group's movement. His decisions are no longer purely reactive, they are anticipatory. He begins to understand patterns in both the infected behavior and human reactions under pressure. This awareness allows him to contribute more effectively, coordinating his actions with Sanghua and others in ways that improve the group's overall efficiency. At a critical point in their journey, the group is forced into a situation where movement must be executed with extreme caution. The train passes through a compromised section where visibility is limited and space is restricted, increasing the risk of sudden encounters. Every step forward requires coordination, silence, and timing. The environment becomes a test of discipline rather than strength. Sanghua leads once again, guiding the group through the danger with precision. His movements are efficient and controlled, minimizing risk while maximizing protection for those behind him. Even under intense pressure, he maintains clarity, ensuring that the group does not lose structure. His role becomes increasingly vital as the situation grows more complex. Seok Woo follows closely, now fully integrated into the group's survival dynamic. He reacts quickly, adapts to changes, and supports movement rather than resisting it. His evolution continues quietly but significantly, marking a shift from isolation toward shared responsibility. He is no longer just protecting Suan, he is participating in the collective effort to survive. Suan remains close to him, her emotional awareness continuing to shape the tone of their experience. She observes the sacrifices being made, the fear being managed, and the cooperation being formed under pressure. Her presence reinforces the emotional depth of the situation, reminding Seok-woo that survival is not only physical, it is also moral and emotional. As they move through the train, moments of coordination become more frequent. The group begins to function with a level of understanding that was absent earlier in their journey. Trust remains fragile, but it is present. It is not absolute, but it is enough to maintain forward momentum. And as the train continues through another uncertain stretch of its path, one truth becomes increasingly undeniable. Survival is no longer about escaping danger alone, it is about maintaining unity in a world that constantly tries to break it apart. As the train continues its relentless movement through a collapsing world, the tension inside reaches a deeper, more emotional level. The physical danger remains constant, but now it is accompanied by something even more exhausting: the psychological weight of prolonged survival. The passengers are no longer just reacting to threats, they are living inside a sustained state of uncertainty where every decision carries consequences that cannot be reversed. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, now carries a mindset shaped by experience rather than assumption. The early part of his journey was defined by detachment and control, but that version of him no longer exists in the same way. He has been forced to confront the reality that survival is not an individual calculation, it is a shared condition. His focus on Suan remains unwavering, but his understanding of what it means to protect her has expanded into something more complex and interconnected. Suan, portrayed by Kim Suan, continues to observe the people around her with quiet emotional clarity. Despite the fear and exhaustion surrounding her, she maintains a sense of empathy that remains intact even under pressure. She notices how people change under stress, how some become protective, others become distant, and some struggle simply to hold on to their humanity. Her presence continues to serve as an emotional mirror, reflecting the moral dimension of the journey. Sang-hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, remains one of the strongest stabilizing forces within the group, though his condition now reflects the toll of continuous effort. His physical strength is still essential, but it is his mental resilience that holds the group together. He continues to act without hesitation, creating structure in situations where none exists. Even as exhaustion builds, he prioritizes others, reinforcing his role as both protector and anchor. Inside the train, the survivors face increasingly difficult decisions about movement and trust. Some compartments remain partially safe, but none are guaranteed. Every space is temporary, every pause is short lived, and every attempt at stability is challenged by the next wave of danger. The infected continue to move unpredictably, forcing constant adjustment and preventing any sense of long term security. At the same time, the behavior of the uninfected passengers becomes more fragmented. Fear continues to drive separation, but now there is also growing frustration. Some individuals begin to question the logic of isolation, realizing that cutting off others does not necessarily guarantee safety. Others remain firmly committed to exclusion, believing that strict boundaries are the only way to survive. This ideological divide adds another layer of tension to an already unstable environment. Seok Woo finds himself increasingly involved in these dynamics. He is no longer only responding to immediate threats, he is interpreting human behavior in real time. He begins to understand how fear spreads, how trust collapses, and how quickly groups can shift from cooperation to division. This awareness forces him to make more complex decisions, balancing immediate survival with long term group stability. A critical sequence unfolds as the group is forced to navigate another heavily compromised section of the train. The space is tight, visibility is limited, and the infected presence is unpredictable. Movement must be precise, coordinated, and silent. Every action carries risk, and every delay increases danger. Sang-hwa leads the movement with controlled intensity, ensuring that the group remains aligned even under pressure. His decisions are immediate but thoughtful, shaped by experience and responsibility. He absorbs the most dangerous situations, allowing others to move forward safely. His leadership is not spoken, it is demonstrated through action. Seok Woo now operates within this structure more fluidly. His reactions are faster, his awareness sharper, and his decisions more integrated with the group's movement. He no longer isolates himself from collective action. Instead, he participates fully, contributing to the flow that keeps them alive. Suan remains close, her emotional presence continuing to influence the atmosphere. She sees the strain on everyone, the effort required to continue, and the small sacrifices being made repeatedly. Her understanding of the situation deepens even if she cannot fully articulate it. She represents the emotional continuity of the journey, the part that remains human even when everything else becomes survival driven. As the group progresses, coordination improves in subtle ways. Movements become more synchronized, communication becomes more efficient, and trust, though still fragile, begins to re-establish itself in small essential moments. These improvements do not eliminate danger, but they make it survivable. And as the train continues forward into another stretch of uncertainty, one realization becomes increasingly clear. Survival is no longer just about enduring danger. It is about learning how to move together through it, even when fear is still present in every step. As the train continues its final stretch, the atmosphere inside has transformed into something quieter but far more intense. The chaos has not disappeared. It has evolved into a steady, exhausting pressure that lingers in every compartment, every breath, every movement. The survivors are no longer reacting in panic, they are enduring. What remains now is a long, uncertain continuation of survival where every moment feels like both progress and struggle at the same time. Seok Woo, portrayed by Gong Yoo, stands in a state of reflection even while remaining alert. His journey has reshaped him in ways he never expected. The man who once believed in control, distance, and calculation has been replaced by someone who understands that survival is deeply connected to connection, trust, and responsibility. His focus on Suan is still the center of his world, but that focus now exists within a broader understanding of humanity and shared struggle. Suan, portrayed by Kim Suan, remains a quiet, emotional presence at the heart of everything. She has witnessed fear, sacrifice, kindness, and loss in ways that have shaped her understanding of the world far beyond her age. Yet she does not lose her sense of empathy. Even after everything, she continues to see people not only as survivors or threats, but as human beings trying to endure an impossible situation. Her presence becomes a reminder of what the world risks losing in moments of extreme crisis. Sang-hwa, portrayed by Ma Dong-seok, continues to act with unwavering strength, though his exhaustion is now undeniable. Every movement carries weight, every decision carries urgency. Yet he does not step back. His role has become symbolic of resilience under pressure, not just physical strength, but moral strength. He continues to protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when the cost to himself grows heavier. The train itself feels like a moving fragment of a broken world. Inside it, the survivors carry forward not only their physical journey, but also the emotional burden of everything they have experienced. The infected threat remains present, but it is no longer the only force shaping their reality. Human behavior, fear, trust, sacrifice, and conflict has become just as powerful. As the train nears its final destination, uncertainty grows again. There are no guarantees of safety ahead. The outside world remains unpredictable, and the survivors are aware that leaving the train does not necessarily mean escaping danger. Still, movement continues. Stopping is not an option. Sok Woo holds Suan closer, not just out of protection, but out of understanding. His decisions are now shaped by experience rather than instinct alone. He has learned that survival is not just about avoiding danger, but about choosing what kind of person you remain while facing it. This realization defines his final actions as the journey approaches its conclusion. Sanghua continues to lead the remaining survivors through the final stages of the journey. His strength is still present, but now it is joined by a sense of inevitability. He understands the cost of every step, yet he continues forward without hesitation. His role has become more than survival. It is sacrifice, responsibility, and leadership under impossible conditions. Suan watches everything with quiet awareness, her emotional understanding deepened by everything she has witnessed. She no longer sees survival as simple escape. Instead, she sees it as something more complex, a reflection of human choices under pressure, where kindness and fear exist side by side. As the train moves into its final moments, the survivors prepare for what comes next. There is no certainty about what awaits them beyond the doors, only the knowledge that staying still is not an option. The journey has reshaped everyone who remains, leaving behind a version of themselves that cannot be returned to what it once was. And as the train approaches its end, one final truth settles over everything. Survival is not defined by escaping danger, it is defined by what remains of humanity when the danger is finally faced. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing movie breakdowns. See you in the next video.